Hi everyone, welcome to Equality Week. So my name is Sandrine and I'm the Equality Chairperson. And then today I am joined by one of the founders of LMAR, Zoe Lawlor. So if you can just give us a brief introduction of what LMAR is.
Hi, Sandrine, and thanks for having me to talk about this. So, LMAR is the Limerick Movement Against Racism, and we started last year. And the goal of the group is to, be a place to for people to feel safe to talk about racism or any experiences they have, and for us to provide resources to educators, to people in lots of different workspaces, so that they can, make sure that their workplace is a place that's safe for people, safe from racism, and to fight racism and discrimination in general
Mm-hmm.
in Limerick. Yeah, and obviously the wider area. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. So then the way you say like LMAR is very Limerick based. So like why did you join it?
So I'm involved in different groups in Limerick, and with all of this stuff, a lot of the same people overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So I often said to John, who one of the other founders, like we should have something like Galway Anti-Racism Network
Mm-hmm.
uh, for Limerick specifically, because while there are all these different organizations who do work, that part of that work is anti-racism, it's not specifically anti-racism. And then you guys came along, and everyone else came along, and I came along, and we met and started the group. So I wanted to be part of something in Limerick that's like a very clear anti-racism group, and I think that's very important, especially at the moment, because we're seeing this like very worrying rise of the far right, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, because I remember last year, like when we first joined in, and like when I first joined it was just because it was like, we had BLM, and like a lot
Yeah.
of people were very interested in like talking about racism. But I think like with a group like ours, it was the first one which wasn't debating whether or not that exists. It was like, it
Yes.
does. Let's
Yeah.
see how, because like it's 2021 and we've already had like, let's say, that whole year of it. And
Yeah.
people, and like it's still being debated.
I
It's
know.
like,
This is
how
not a
like
debate.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's literally like, have we not learned anything from last year, like, so like as you say, like the rise of the far right, and it's very like, oh no, like that won't come to Ireland. We
I
see it
know.
now.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
And
so
also
mm-hmm.
this awful notion that Ireland isn't racist, which
Mm-hmm.
is just such a myth, that anyone who has experienced Ireland could tell you isn't true, but yeah.
Yeah, and like why do you think there's that myth then? Because like as you say, like that is the continuous response when people are talking about racism, even though the people which come out, like, so like myself, like I'm very specific, being like, okay, this is like a once, not a once off incident, but it's an incident that happened, but I'm not labeling every Irish person racist. I'm just labeling that small
Yeah.
minority racist.
Yeah, I mean, I think because of the kind of historical Irish situation of being colonized
Mm-hmm.
and then not identifying as, a colonial entity. So I guess as a group of people who did experience colonization, people don't want to think of themselves as being
Mm-hmm.
racist, but mythologize, even if you look at Irish America,
Mm-hmm.
they mythologize the good Irish Americans like the Kennedys or whatever, and totally forget about the people who were participated in slavery, in terrible racism there, and then also here. And then I think because Ireland is structurally and systemically and socially racist against travelers,
Mm-hmm.
and has always been, people don't want to acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
So they, and it's a nice myth to have about yourself. Well, like, we're not racist,
Yeah.
it's,
No, definitely. And I think that's a really good point you brought about, like in regards to travelers, because like the last while, like when I've been engaging in this conversation regards racism, I just asked like, what's the definition of it? And it's like, oh, white people doing this to black people. I'm like,
yeah,
no, that's not the definition of it. And you're so right, like we're travelers, we've seen time in and time out, they're left out of all these conversation when it comes to racism, do you know? And like you are left to wonder again, like, why is that? But as you stated, it's because it's been a thing for such a long time, and then people just don't question it.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you look at the recent commission and report into the mother and baby homes, there was huge racism experienced even within all the other awful abuse and trauma that women and children were subjected to in there. But even the report dismissed the racism as not really being racism, even though the testimony was very clear from the survivors that what had happened to them had an added element of awfulness, of terrible treatment as specifically racist. So yeah, I do think it's something that really needs to be grappled with here, you know,
Mhm.
to make a change. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I just think when it comes to Ireland, we're still using the same terminology and the same race theories that are used in
Yeah,
America. And like we can't apply that to Ireland. So do you know, and that's why I think it's because in Ireland, like we don't have like police brutality, but yet we do
totally.
have
Yeah.
subtle racism. We do have institutionalized racism, like direct provision. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't even connect the two because again, it's just we see America and we're very happy to be like, okay, at least we're not as bad as them. But it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it is definitely. And then, so in regards to that, then, like, what is the significance of having a group like LMAR?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, it's really important to have a specific group in Limerick that says we totally see that there is huge amounts of racism. We have a big job here to try and fight it and to work against it, to educate about it, to talk about it, and to give people a place where they can find out where can I report what's happened to me or what I've seen happen to someone else. How do I deal with this? Is there a way to talk about it, even to
Mm-hmm.
expose it? So I think that's what's so important about having, you know, a specific group and in a specific place, you know, because there is the ENR, Irish Network Against Racism, but, you know, for people in Limerick or the wider area, where do they go or who do they talk to or, you know, what even are the procedures if you want to report racism? I think it's important
Yeah,
to
no,
have
yeah,
all
no,
this.
definitely, because I think that's like the really important thing. Like when it comes to racism, like let's say if you're not experiencing it, but like you're a bystander, you watch it.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's very hard to know, like, do you intervene, do you not? And if you see something like, as you say, like it's really good to just have a point of contact there,
yeah,
because then at least it kind of even like curates an opportunity to like talk to the person who's experiencing it, being like, okay, like obviously I couldn't help out because sometimes it's just unsafe to do, and then other
yeah.
times like people are just not educated onto like the right
Mm-mm-mm.
process of doing it, and like that's nobody's fault, but it is by finding a point of contact. It's like we're literally saying no to racism and not excusing that behavior, definitely.
Absolutely.
And then what other organizations in Limerick are you involved in that combat racism and discrimination?
Yes, the main group I'm involved with in Limerick and nationally is the Ireland Palestine Solidarity Campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a solidarity group that works to support the Palestinian people in their struggle for freedom, justice, and equality from Israeli apartheid, gross racism, war crimes, occupation, siege. So that's it's focused on Palestine, but it's a part of a broader anti-racist struggle. You know, it's very much connected to Black Lives Matter, to, you know, fighting all kinds of racism and discrimination. I'm also involved in Shannon Watch.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a group that we protest the use of Shannon Airport by the US military because, like, also I think that's anti-racist because I think I know that racism is a justification for being able to murder people in other countries because they're maybe not quite as equal or as
Mm-hmm.
important as the people who are killing them. And I've been involved in informally in refugee migrant solidarity, a campaign against direct provision, campaign for the right to work for people within the direct provision system, Yeah, so that's it. And now LMAR. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so there is like I think I was just asking that question just in regards to show people like there is a lot of volunteering opportunities. Like if you are seeing something, then like sometimes people do feel very helpless in that regards. So it's just nice to be like, okay, like just say like if you're seeing direct provision and you want to do something about it, there's different groups that you can go to. And again, like, and I think that's the great thing about volunteering. It's like you get to meet this different people which all have the same views and ideals as you, and then like as you stated, like you're fighting for a just cause. So then just lastly, what does equality and diversity mean to you?
Yeah,
Very
it's
loaded
like
question.
huge question. I mean, I guess to me, I think the most important thing about any kind of equality means that people don't have to always have to fight and struggle for what they should have,
Mm-hmm.
for the rights that they should get, for the treatment that everyone is entitled to, and that people feel, you know, safe, represented, loved, wanted, and that I think it's Angela Davis. I saw her. She's one of my heroes. I saw her talking about this. She talked about the endless kind of fight, and Toni Morrison as well, to have to explain yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and that takes so much of your life energy. And I feel that if we had, you know, a properly equal society, no one would have to, you know, like you said, explain, oh, racism happens,
Mm-hmm.
I experience this, or discrimination happens, or I'm a disabled person who's marginalized or left out. You know, that energy wouldn't need to be expended by people. And to me, that would be real equality. And that people, then everyone would have access, you know, because it's a class thing as well, to housing, to education, to, you know, every type of job, and to just a life of dignity. So I think that's really important. And I also think, like we saw it a lot with, you know, when Black Lives Matter was so big, even here last summer, is that you finally saw, you know, people being interviewed on TV that aren't normally, or on the radio, but they're only being asked about racism.
Yeah.
You know, and that's that kind of, oh, here's the representation, but it's limited, it's short-lived, and it's only for you to talk about racism. So
Mm-hmm.
that to me is also really inequality, because it means people never get to just talk about themselves or their lives or what's happening to them in the normal life.
Yeah.
And I think Ireland is a much more diverse place now than it used to be, which is brilliant. But I don't see that representation at all in Irish politics, in media, you know, in like top positions or even middle positions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think society is much further along than structures of society. And I
Yeah.
guess equality would be like a smashing of that kind of structural inequality and those structures of inequality, racism, classism, all of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you've hit the nail in the head there, like in regards to even with diversity, like as you say, like when we did see like with Black Lives Matter, like, yeah, you did have people talking about it, but then like you're falling into that trap because it's kind of like someone is more than their race or their gender
Yeah,
or their thing. Like they do have other aspects, and definitely like in
yeah,
order for it to be diversity, like they should be able to, yes, talk about this one aspect of their lives, but then also a different multitude
yeah.
of different things to talk about as well.
I was watching Tommy Tiernan with Felly Speaks and Tolu McKay the other day or the other night, and they weren't speaking about racism. They were just
Yeah.
talking about themselves, and it was
Hmm.
just great. And it's like, yeah, this is what should be the norm on TV. You
Hmm.
know, it shouldn't be like, oh, this is a standout because this doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know, it should be, this is like a normal interview, you know, or not normal, of course it's normal. I mean, a constant, you know, that people are just being themselves. I'm a poet, I'm a singer,
Yeah,
not,
no, and they were brilliant. The way that they were able to like switch in from their
oh, it's
Nigerian accent
fantastic.
to
Yeah.
the Irish, like, yeah, definitely. But thank you so much, Zoe. I'll just
No
stop.
problem.